This is the CritRPG PubCrawl, where we talk with all the publishers in the progression fantasy and LitRPG space. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for coming to the podcast. That was it. Let's go. You're a busy man, Jess. And I guess aren't we all? Hi and welcome.
Thank you very much, mate. I think we're all busy. We've all got to be constantly doing a million jobs these days, so we're always trying to keep out of trouble.
Yeah. Attention splitting, task splitting, not a good idea.
No.
So, hi and welcome everyone to the CritRPG PubCrawl, today with Jazz from Legion Publishing. It's
Hello,
Jazz
everybody.
or Jazz?
Jez.
Jazz, okay.
Yeah.
Is it short for Jezebel?
Jeremy. But I just never ever used it, so since I was about 12, I've been Jez.
Nice.
I also respond to, "Oh, you bastard."
I think as fitting, before the podcast started, we talked about that you are very improvisational. So maybe that's also that, right?
Very much so, yeah. I don't tend to plan things. It's very much a case of I'm a pantser, definitely in the way that I write.
Is that how Legion Publishing came to be? Just kind of like spontaneously manifested?
It wasn't really. Legion was actually very well planned out, which was very unusual for me, but it's because it's in conjunction with my wife and Geneva Agnos. The three of us are directors of Legion. But we started Legion up because when I first started out, I was very lucky, and I was primarily very lucky, I think, in that my success was the way that it was. But it meant that I got a lot of people paying attention. I got a lot of people that messaged me, that sent offers, and that I had meetings with that offered me wonderful deals on things like audio, on film rights, on a lot of different things. And when I started reading the terms and conditions of these contracts, they were ridiculous. And we're fortunate in that we've got a solicitor and a lawyer in the family. And one of the contracts, one of the companies that reached out to me and promised the world, essentially gave us an NDA to sign before they would allow us to see their contract or have any realistic, real discussion about things. And the NDA was described by a London-based lawyer, so bear in mind that these are parasites at the best of times. It was described by him as the most predatory document he had ever seen. So when somebody's offering you a contract, but they won't tell you what's in the contract or any other details until you've signed an NDA on that, we just got to the point where we were thinking there's so many people out there that won't play nice, that won't play fair, that their only aim is to try and screw you over to get ahead. And we just thought, this is wrong. We were fortunate enough that we set up and we did well enough that we could continue on our own. We didn't need anybody else in that regard. And then we thought about it and thought, well, there's a couple of other really good publishing houses out there who are doing this and who are doing not the dodgy stuff. They're doing things the right way and trying to help people. We thought, well, why the hell not? I know that a lot of us are swamped, and it's a case of we've closed submissions. And my wife and Geneva and I sat down and we talked about it, and we decided that what we would do is launch Legion with the specific aim of helping to launch other authors. Now, don't get me wrong, we make money out of this as well. This is a business. So, I'll hold my hand up and I'll say we do actually make a profit on this. Otherwise, we wouldn't stay in business. But we do it with the author primarily in focus. So it's a case of they take the bigger share. We don't. We cover all the costs because if we believe in you, if we read your stuff and go, yes, this is somebody we want to work with, then we'll cover those costs because we're taking that risk. We're not expecting you to write your book, do all the work, like do 9 months or a year or whatever it is that you've spent writing this book, then hand it in for us just to slap some money on the top of it and put it out the door and take the majority. That's dodgy as all hell. So instead, we cover the costs. We say, right, look, we trust you on this. We like it. We believe this will work. So we then cover all the costs for it, and you start making your money from day one. I just think it's fairer. It's the way that we do it.
So you don't do advances in that way?
It depends. Depends on the situation. It's a case of we don't do direct advances from Legion side of things, but depending on the audio We act as negotiators with others. So
Okay.
it's a case of Podium and Tantor primarily we work with. So if it's a case of you want an advance, then we will work with Podium or Tantor, and we use our bigger reach essentially with representing other authors and already having successes under the belt to then negotiate with them to get you a bigger advance. And we
Okay.
take 20% of that off the top, and you take 80%. So
Okay.
the people that we've got those advances for, put it this way, so far they've been very pleased.
Yeah, I can see that. One question I've had, because I had Robin Sullivan on the self-publishing podcast, and she talked a lot about ACX. And I kind of been wondering, I mean, obviously Tantor and Podium both know what they're doing in the LitRPG space, right? But is there any particular reason why we don't use ACX more? Because they have, like, they give way more percentages?
Basically, it's a case of the way that we work it is some audio is produced in-house, and that's always with us directly. Some is in work with others. It's just we evaluate each one on a case-by-case basis and that particular author's needs. So it might be a case of you say, look, I really want to do this. I really want to make the most money we can, which will always be in-house because you're not splitting it with another publisher, then with us, then, going down the line all the time. So you'll always make more money if you produce it in-house. But it could be that you really need this advance right now because you have some bills, you have something going on where you say, I need a wedge of cash to fix X in my life, or to make sure that you have that money there that says that you can go full time. You might be borderline and go, well, can I afford to? Can I not? Well, actually, if I can get X amount of thousand to sit in the bank, then I know I can take 6 months, a year, or whatever off and launch myself. So
That makes
that's
sense.
why we do it that way around.
I think that's actually pretty good point, right? If you're, I'm always on that train, and I've mentioned it in several episodes before, but becoming a writer full time is great if that's something that your life requires. Whether it that you're like super unhappy in your job or you just need the money or whatever. But I think becoming a writer for the money is a recipe for disaster. Because
yeah, it's definitely a case of the lifestyle is a big part of it, because I'm very much I believe that writing is, as much as it is joyous, it is a wonderful thing, it is also a job. And when you quit any job to go to a new job, you have to be stable. You have to be convinced that you can make it in that career. You don't leave a really good company that you've got all these benefits for, and then go to this really dodgy one around the corner that says, "Oh, well, we'll probably pay you. We might not pay you this week." You're never going to do that if you treat it as a normal job.
yeah.
But equally, if you leave your normal job to go writing full time, and then you sort of go, oh, well, I'm going to game 6 hours a day, and I'm going to drink all day, or I'm going to do whatever. Well, you're not going to produce much.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that if I'm going to work, I work Monday to Friday. I work 0800 generally, depending on it's one of the days when I'm at the gym or not. I work 0800 in the morning through till 1700 my time.
Yeah.
So 8 in the morning till 5, Monday to Friday. And I work those hours. And because we're involved in a lot of stuff with America, we then have meetings generally on night times, my wife and I, once the kids have gone to bed. But we're very much, these are my core working hours. And so I'm in the seat, I'm in my office writing Monday to Friday, 8 till 5.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, I mean, if I hit my targets early on a day, some days I'll go, I'm going to play on Starfield today. I'm going to play on Baldur's Gate. Yeah, this is great. I can do what I want. But you do that a little bit and you look at it and you go, I've had a really good day today, and I've written, I've written 5,000 words, and then I've played for 4 hours. I could have hit 10,000 words today.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I
should
can
have
see
hit
where you're coming
10,000
from.
words. And so the way that I do it is I set myself a weekly target that this is what I have to hit this week to be ahead of to hit my targets. If I can get a little bit ahead of that, great, I've got some time to play. If I've hit my daily target by 12 o'clock, hey, fantastic. Maybe I'll, once the kids are in bed, because I've got two little ones, 3-year-old and 5. My 3-year-old still has a nap. So 1:30, he goes down for a nap till 4 o'clock, which is brilliant. because I'll then have 2.5 hours of gaming time if I've done well.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, we talked about it, right? If you just have too much time on your hands, like you're not really getting anywhere. But
Yeah.
I think it's yeah, also using the most productive time of your day, because I'm a firm believer that no one's productive for 8 hours a day.
Nah.
I personally think
No,
that
no.
in the last 2 hours you produce work that is so bad that you actually have to fix it in the best hours of your next day. So
Yeah. It's like I say, I find that if you don't have structure, but this is just me, this is the way that my mind works.
Mhm.
I need structure, so I need to know that this is what I'm doing at this time, this is what I'm
Mhm.
doing at that time. And
Mhm.
then I can reward myself by having free
Yeah,
time to game and to do things.
yeah, that's completely
But I
true.
need to, if I don't hit those targets, you think about it and go, right, well,
Mhm.
if I hit a target of 5,000 words
Mhm.
per day,
Mhm.
25,000 words a week,
Mhm.
100,000 words a month,
Mhm.
2 months, that's a decent book written.
Mhm.
200,000 word book, that's my average
In
instead of
LitRPG,
200,000.
everywhere else it's 2 books, but yeah.
Yeah, those weirdos. Uh, but it's a case of that gives me an average of 2 months
Mm,
turnaround to write a book, and
mm.
that gives it a pretty good earning.
Yeah.
If instead you go, all right, well, I'm going to game today. Oh, well, I might do a bit of writing later on. Oh, I'll get around to it. You
Yeah.
might get 1,000 words done,
Mm,
and yet you feel like you've done nothing because you've been all over the place
mm,
doing little jobs here and I'll just
mm,
because for anybody that's listening that's married and that has children, your life is already not your own. It's a case of you have the jobs that you need to get done yourself. You have the jobs that your wife has decided you're going to get done.
mm.
Some of which she's told you, some of which she won't tell you until she feels good and ready to. And all the things that are to do with the kids and the bits and pieces, because realistically, a lot of the time our partners believe you're not at work, even though you're in your office and you're writing. Oh yes, you're at work, but while you're there, can you just sort out the garage? And don't forget, we need to change the bins, and we need to do this. And could you take this to the tip and pick the kids up from? And suddenly you go, wait a minute, I've lost 4 hours of my day. So no, we're really good in that we talk about this, Chrissy and
Mm,
I, my wife. We talked about it outright and just went, look, this is what it is. I did a spreadsheet,
mm.
and
Oh,
every
nice.
time I was getting interrupted, I just marked down like half an hour lost. Because when you're in a writing flow,
Oh yeah.
if you then stop and then you go off and you come back to it, you have to reread what you were doing, get
Mm.
sort of up to speed, and generally a 5 minute interruption can cost you half an hour.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, half an hour lost here, half an hour lost here, half an hour lost here. We went through it, we sat down, we talked about it, and it was like, right, you need to not be bothered when you're in your office. It's like, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. Same thing with a podcast. I completely agree.
exactly. Yeah.
I'm not saying you're my wife, but you get what I mean,
Ah,
right?
you got more hair than me,
Yeah. Long hair too.
Hey.
Um, and okay. That brings me back though
Hmm.
to publishing.
Mhm.
Because I mean, you've written your book in 2 months, obviously, as you do.
Mhm.
Um, and then afterwards, do you edit?
I do. Well, because of the way that my mind works, I
Mm,
can't do. When I first started out, a friend of mine, Luke Chimlenko,
mhm,
recommended to me that when you hate your book,
mm,
it is ready, and yeet it out of the window. Just when you can't stand that thing any longer, just throw it out.
mm,
Because if you keep going through, if you think about this logically, if you start at word one
mm,
and you write to word 100,000,
mhm,
by the time you reach word 100,000, X amount of hours have gone. Let's say
mhm,
100 hours have gone. Those 100 hours of your practicing, your craft, you have
mhm,
improved. Unless you're doing something seriously wrong, you have improved. So the temptation's always there to go back to word one and
mm.
to fix things with
Yeah,
the things you've learned over this 100,000 words or 100
yeah,
hours or whatever it is. And so you do that and you start tinkering. And you will tinker until you need to rewrite, you've done the whole book again.
yeah,
And then you are now another 100 hours better than you were.
yeah.
And you'll go back to the beginning. Never ever do that. The way that I work is I write everything in one pass. I
Mm,
start, I have a secondary document up that I can chuck things in. So if I
mm.
think, oh, I've introduced Bob and Bob's traveling along with the main party all the way
Your
through
uncle?
this, whoever it is, just random Bob the uncle, Bob the wife, whatever. And we say, right, well, I've just realised that at chapter 47, I put Bob in with the party, and Bob's done nothing for 30 chapters because I totally forgot he was there.
Yeah, he was just kind of
So
bopping
then,
along.
exactly. Yeah, you knew that was coming. But then your side document, you can then put in that and say, fix Bob. Bob isn't in chapters 1 to 30 or whatever it is. And you don't then have to stop, go back to the beginning, start fixing through. Instead, you've got this point that you know you need to fix. So then you continue on, just as you have been, get to the end of the document, and you'll continue putting little details in this side note. And then when you finish, you go back to the beginning and you do your second pass, but you do it as a fast pass because you know that this needs fixed here, this needs fixed here, this needs fixed here. And it just speeds up the whole process.
How do you know how to go on?
How do you mean?
Without having fixed the past? Because that might inform your future decisions.
Because the story that you're working on is already building. So if you then go back and you change something, the rest of the story between points, E and F, might then be changed. And if you change it at that point, it's going to alter the rest of it. It's going to knock the whole thing out of sync. Your path that you've got for this story that is in your head that you are working on, whether it's consciously or if you're like me, if you're a pantser, and it's just literally you're going through it all, that's there anyway. So follow that path to the end. Because you can always, Bob that wasn't in for these chapters, maybe he met Sally and he sodded off and left the party at point 3 or wherever it was. When you come back to the beginning, you can fix those. And when you're doing those fixes, it'll be a lot smoother because if you finish the entire book, you know what's going on all the way along. So your fixes will be closer in line with it. I found that's the way mine works.
So is that also the stuff that you wish authors knew?
In all honesty, because the way that I think of it is if people keep going back to the beginning, they will never finish the story. If they keep going to the end and then you come back to the beginning and do one pass, you'll keep the original flavor of the story. Because I can't speak for other people, but I know that if I write dark stories. I always have. It's the way it is. I tried to write happy, cheerful stuff. It just didn't work at all. If I've been reading something that is particularly happy and cheerful or twisted or whatever it is, it's a different flavor from what I'm writing. I can see the change in that when I read through things, I can see a slight change in the flavor of the book that I'm writing because I've unconsciously picked up bits from those and I really like this, and you change things. If you do it all in one go for your book and pay attention to what you're reading so you're not reading stuff that's totally different, if you've got a mind like a sponge like mine, if you're squirrel-brained, then you'll find it's much easier because you get to the end of the book, you can come back to the very beginning, and you do that second pass. I generally do the second pass in a week, if that. And then it's done. And then as far as I'm concerned, I'm paying damn good editors. They can fix that. I then do as Luke said, and I yeet that out the window and go, fix that now. And the thing is, this comes back to me because I'll hold my hands up. I have 3 editors. I don't just do the one edit and then that's it, it's done. I have a developmental editor who's very, very good. When it comes back from her, I'm then fixing sort of things that she's picked out, tweaking the story, getting that done. It then comes back, I go to the line editor. Line editing tidies up my terrible grammar and then abuses the perfectly good writing by cutting out U's and adding in Z's and stuff, the way that Americans do. It's sacrilege. And
Blasphemy.
It is. It's absolute blasphemy. And once we've gotten past the fact that no Americans can spell, it then comes back and we then send it across to our science and continuity. Now, science and continuity editing, I think, is important because if you're scatterbrained, like I am, Steve is 6'3", and in book 4, Steve is 6'3", and in book 5, Steve is 6'5", and then he's 6'3" again. What happened to those 2 extra inches? And that's the kind of stuff that a science and continuity editor goes through. It's also a case of they go through and they pick out the problems. For example, I was using a gamma tokamak in one of my books, and they pointed out actually black corium works much better with this because of, and explaining the bits of it, and I failed science. I failed
Mm.
school.
Mm.
So when I'm saying something like, this is my science bit, it's probably going to be wrong, and I will need tweaks from my science editor. But it helps.
I know the meaning of some of those words, yes. Like
Yeah.
science, for example.
Exactly. Well, the Gamma tokamak stuff, I'd picked
Mhm.
up the tokamak stuff from Peter F. Hamilton, because I'm a
Mhm.
massive Peter F. Hamilton fan,
Mhm.
and some of the phrases he used, I used. And
Mhm.
then my science guy came back and do you realize you've just plugged words together which don't actually mean anything in the context you've used them? And I was like, right. Okay, yeah, fair point. So he's like,
You
use black corium instead. I was like, black corium sounds great. We'll have some of that.
awesome. That sounds great. Is that close
Yeah,
to unobtainium? I guess so.
yeah, it's fine.
But that actually makes me ask. So Legion, I think you write like you publish sci-fi, obviously.
Well, we're quite happy to do sci-fi. We focused primarily on LitRPG.
Okay, awesome.
Always LitRPG as our primary focus. I
Mm-hmm.
write primarily dark fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I've got 5 series. I've got well, 4 series. I've got a spin-off that was just a
Mm-hmm.
one-off book that was a bit of craziness. And those books I've done Cyberpunk, I've done dark fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
I've done sort of urban fantasy, I've done
Mm-hmm.
dungeon core. And I like to have a jot about to try and find out what I like to do and what I like to play with.
Yeah.
And as part of that, sometimes you have a lot of science. Literally the cyberpunk stuff, you need a fair bit of science in there because the
Mm-hmm.
world is the way that it is. You
Mm-hmm.
need the actual tech. You need to explain why it works. It doesn't just work because of hand waving.
Mm-hmm.
So people will complain if you try and pass that one off.
Yeah. I like Cyberpunk.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is, we tried
Mm-hmm.
Cyberpunk because so many people complained that there weren't any Cyberpunk stories out there.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason there aren't that many Cyberpunk stories out there is no fucker reads them.
Yeah.
You ask for them, so we write them, and then hardly any people read them. It's like, well,
Yeah, I kind of feel as though like when people say cyberpunk, they mean something really really specific.
yeah,
Wait, are
it's
you one of the Artem guys?
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I think when people mean cyberpunk, they mean something like cyberpunk lit RPG, kind of like Cyber Dreams and Stray Cat Strut and stuff like that.
hmm
Kind of like lighthearted and silly.
yeah.
And as soon as I guess it gets to Cyberpunk 2077, people are like,
And yet, that's if you read a lot of like Philip K. Dick,
yeah,
if you read the real cyberpunk stuff,
yeah, that's
but
that. Yeah, I know.
yeah,
I think what people actually want is they want Shadowrun.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, that's
but
fun.
without the actual undercore, like underlying issues. They just want it touched on. They don't want it to go, to go into it. But
I mean this
for
in the best way possible.
yeah,
Lit RPG readers don't want to think,
yeah,
and that is legit.
yeah, massively, massively so.
That's legit. It's perfectly fine. So it becomes a spinach question. Brandon Sanderson has this thing where he jokes about the fact that like his wife convinces kids that spinach is just in the smoothie to make it look cool,
Mhm.
because it's not a vegetable. And I feel as though if you write a very cool, interesting romp with like cool, fun characters, and then sprinkle in some existential horror, you got Dungeon Crawler Carl.
Yeah,
People love that, and it is a complete deconstruction of everything that is spectacular media. Everything, if you read it that way, right? So
yeah.
anyway, cutting back to the main part. So that's kind of what you wish authors knew. Anything else in that vein, especially when it
Um,
comes to publishing?
I would suggest we've had a few people that we've got applications from that they've then said when we've looked at so we work on the first 3 chapters essentially because
Mhm.
this is the primary part for any book because people
Mhm.
will pick it up, they will read the first couple of chapters,
Mhm.
and then they decide if they're going to read the rest of the book or not. So if those
Mhm.
first chapters aren't good,
Mhm.
you know, that's where we make the decision. It's literally a case of we've had a few people who've then turned around and said, "Oh yes, and I understand when we've given feedback."
Mhm.
They've said, "Well, oh, I fixed that later on, or I improved on that, and I've done this instead, and I don't do that anymore." And you go, "That's great. We can't judge you on what you do on chapter 47
Mm-hmm.
We judge you on chapters like literally 0 if you've got a prologue, but 1 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you say, oh, well, I'm well aware of that problem and I fix it later on, why didn't you fix it in the bit that you submitted? Because that's the bit that we're seeing.
And that's the reason why I'm redoing my beginning.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess we can talk about it
Beyond
later.
that, it's literally a case of always imagine the bit that the reader is going through, because as an author, some of us redo the same section again and again and again. As I've said, some people just do it in one go. But what you have as an author is you have an understanding of the world that those readers don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know that all of these people in the world have a backstory, have a reason, or they don't for being
Ideally.
where they are. Yeah, ideally. But it's a case of you know these details. If you say that Bob in the corner, Bob's always getting the blame here, but
Bob.
Bob's in the
Fucking Bob,
corner.
man.
Now you know that Bob is dressed as a pirate because he's just been to a wonderful party last night and he's still drunk from it. That's great, fantastic.
Typical Bob,
If
yes.
you, yeah, exactly, you know what Bob's like. But if you say that Bob is in the corner and you don't describe him, you know in your head that Bob is wearing a pirate outfit because he was at that party. Fantastic, wonderful. You don't describe that. The reader has no clue. So what I do is I imagine that, I imagine the character in the scene at the very beginning of it, and then I build the whole scene around them in my head, and I start writing it. But then I look at it and I say, imagine a door between you as the reader and everything that's going on, and now imagine a keyhole in that door. If you put your eye to that keyhole, that is what the reader is seeing. They are seeing only what you show them, and that's what's in the book. Because you know you've got all these extra bits, but if they don't make it into the book,
Yeah, but
the reader
Jazz,
doesn't know.
that is what extensive info dump chapters are for.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody else. Believe you me.
I have read many an amazing story, and I was like, this is actually really interesting. If only half of the book was an encyclopedia. Like there was one story that I absolutely loved. Really great story, amazing story. I can't describe it too much because I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. But at some point, the main character had to make a decision. And so they thought about something that had happened in the past to her. And then there was this like tiny little like, what was it? Black neutronium or whatever what it was?
Black corium.
Black
Yeah.
corium. And see, I also felt science.
Yeah.
And they thought of that. And then they thought about how that thing was invented. And then how they related to the inventor of that thing, and then how the inventor and her did this adventure stuff, and how that impacted the galaxy in total, and the continent building, and legit, in the middle of a dialogue, we had 4 pages of exposition, of backstory that didn't matter at the moment at all. And I was like, who greenlit this? Who allowed this amazing story and this author to suffer like that?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a very good point. The only other things I think I would add to the sort of stuff I wish authors knew is read your goddamn contracts. Please, if you're not interested in it, give it to somebody in your family or friend that you trust. Get them to read it, and always ask. Some of the contracts we've been offered by people have been really good and really straightforward. And I mean, our entire contract is on our website, legionpublishers.com. Because, legionpublishers.com. We took the off just for the way that it works. But we put it up there straight away so people can see it, so that there's no dodgy stuff in it. I have seen contracts, and legitimately, one of the reasons that we set up as we did was that somebody offered me a contract, an audio only contract. They would cover all the costs, everything. The whole negotiation was great. When I started reading through the contract itself that came through, not only were there fines if I paid late, because a little bit further on, there was if it didn't make enough money, that they wouldn't specify how much. But if it didn't make enough money, then I had to repay all the costs. And there were dates that I had to repay all those costs by. But further and further into things, in the lovely little really small print, was that they would own all audio rights to everything I ever produced while in contract, even if I didn't give them that book or anything else. But the best bit of it all
What?
was that the person that would decide if the contract renewed for another 7 years, every 7 years, was them. So they had written into this contract that they would own all rights, essentially, to everything I would ever write, all audio. They would own all those rights forever,
Are you
and they could sell
sure
them. Oh yeah,
that
that was
that
that
was
was a contract I was offered.
did they copy that from like some sort of like diamond
That
mine
was
or something?
it was horrific. But those are just the high, well, the particularly low points of that contract. But if you don't read it, this is a contract that
Mm.
all of my discussions with that person had been really positive.
Mm.
And they'd, oh yes, it's great, we'll do this, we'll do this. Everything sounded great, and it was literally a pro forma. Oh, I'll just have a quick read through the contract, and then I
Mm.
found all this stuff. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of people that are out there. And the vast majority of people that are interested in publishing, that are doing the publishing houses, are definitely not going to pull that kind of crap.
Mm.
But some people will. So please always read your contracts.
Even if someone, or especially if someone gives you the contract and kind of suggests that you should sign it as soon as possible, always take
Very
at
much.
least like I've had this once in a different position where someone like, so great, we discussed everything. Here's the contract, and it was face to face. So can you just sign this real quick? And I said, this was a great meeting. I'll gladly take the contract. I'll get back to you in a week. And they got
Yeah.
all fussy about it. I'm like, okay, you know what? Keep the contract.
Yeah.
Call me.
If they don't want you to get the contract checked over, if they don't want you to read it, then there's something in there that they don't want you to see.
Yeah.
Any publishing house, because the thing is that one of your legal defenses, and I'm not, obviously it depends on where you are in the world and your legal system, but one of your best legal defenses is not understanding the contract, not having read the contract. If something goes badly wrong, you can actually use that as part of a defense. It's not going to be a good defense, but it's a good one to add in with the other stuff, depending on where you are in the world, because they know that a lot of people don't read those contracts. Now, it's a case of if they can get this signed straight away and get it out, the courts know people are being dodgy. That's why they allow this to be as part of your defense. Don't rely on that, because it's not a good place to be. You can use it,
Yeah.
but jeez.
Yeah, always take a day, think it over. If you
At
have
least.
if you have a solicitor or barrister friend, just give it to them.
Yeah. Because if we
And
give out a
yeah,
contract, we don't want to see it back in 5 seconds. We want to see that you've read it, because it shows that you're paying attention as well.
yeah, that's a good point. Okay, speaking of people who surprise you, or things that surprised you, any stories that surprised you in recent times?
To be honest, most of I can't say most of the stories, because I've been reading primarily submissions of late. I haven't been reading new stories that are out for everybody else, because I just don't. I only have so many hours, and I've been lucky enough that people are sending me some great stuff. So I've been, oh, I'll read this. It's great. So thinking about it, let's have a quick little think here. What have I read recently that wasn't one of mine? Like one of our publishing house ones. There we go. I knew it was on my shelf. Mudman by James A. Hunter.
Okay.
Now, this is a new one that I got at. I actually got this at DragonCon. Got this there, and this was brilliant. I've had it on my shelf for ages, and I started reading it about, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago. And bear in mind that I have an hour set aside every night for me to read submissions. And it's literally a case of I spend an hour every night before I go to bed reading submissions. I then write 5 days a week. I then work sort of in running a publishing house. So I have very limited time to be able to read. And I had to keep forcing myself to put that down. So I really enjoyed Mudman. The only thing I would say is that James Hunter, he's not really known in the trade much. He just kind of founded, Shadow Alley Press. And
Oh,
a
yeah, that
few
guy.
a few
Yeah,
little books like that, as a
yeah,
Viridian Gate Online, those little things. But no,
yeah.
seriously though, he's brilliant author. I really enjoyed his stuff. Beyond that, what else have I read recently that I really enjoyed? I'm trying to think of something that isn't anything to do with any of our people. I'm sorry, it's
fine. It's also super
kind of got
interesting
me there.
because I definitely feel like there are two funnels,
mm-hmm,
right? So for the Royal Road crowd,
mm-hmm,
everyone knows people like Shirtledoon,
mm-hmm.
Zorgarth, First to Fire,
Carallax, yeah.
right? But on the other side, stuff that hasn't gone through Royal Road is a completely different funnel, and they might not know who Zogarth is, for example.
The vast majority, this is something that I've actually been speaking to Carallax about, is that the vast majority of people who are on Royal Road are only on Royal Road,
Yeah.
only interact on Discord and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Those people who are on Amazon and Audible primarily only interact on Facebook and in the Facebook groups.
Yeah.
You
Super
have
weird.
two, as you say, we've got two massively divergent streams here of people that aren't then. Some people have made jokes about, oh, those bastards over there, oh, they're all so strange over there, and it's the same words used on both sides, because neither of them realise that they're both exactly the same. It's just a case of these groups aren't really together very much at all, and they're all very sort of distrustful of each other, and we're like,
are they
we're all...
though? I
Some of them...
don't just feel like if I hadn't done research for the podcast, I don't think I would have known James, for example.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's literally a case of these, Dakota, for example, Dakota with Mountaindale Press. I've spoken to people in the Royal Road side of things who have no clue, never heard of him.
Yep.
Or Alaron, who is some of the biggest names in LitRPG. Now, I know that for a lot of the Royal Road crew, it's a case of they sell a lot more these days, but these are the guys that were the originals and that were out years before that did a lot of the building of the genre. And it's so strange to me that these two groups just don't interact.
It's a thing of familiarity too, right? I also think that some of the more traditional authors are losing out big by not using Royal Road as a testing ground for their stories.
It
right?
is, but it also does come with certain problems.
Oh yeah.
In that I had my Artem book was copied from Royal, we believe from
that.
Royal Road. Yeah. And I had my entire launch derailed from Amazon because somebody had reported me for plagiarism because my book was already out.
The forehead move is to write stories that no one wants to read on Royal Road.
Wow. Yeah.
And then no one copies it.
Well, yeah, I can see the advantage of that.
See, if you got no Patreons, no one can see the Patreon chapters. Modern problems require modern solutions.
Yeah, it is a solution. I'll give you that.
Yeah. I've done very well with this mantra so far. No, I'm joking, of course.
No, I know. It's literally a case of, I think the Discord, will be a brilliant bridging area.
Yeah.
For both groups.
Silver Pen. Council of Eternal Hiatus.
A lot of the Facebook community does use Discord a little bit. I think this may also be an age thing. Because a lot of the LitRPG community that I'm familiar with on Facebook are generally in their 30s to 40s. Because it's a case of, we don't have time to game anymore. This is our bit of gaming that we get access to. A lot of the Royal Road community tend to be younger from what I've seen.
Yeah, very much so.
And it's a case of the two divergent streams.
Exactly, right? So that's more of the, like Aethon crowd, maybe. I mean, like some people are like 18 when I sign with Aethon, right? So super interesting. Yeah, good points. Speaking of Royal Road, however, this weird thing that we do on Royal Road, shout-outs. You have any shout-outs that you want to give?
Well, I know that Katie Hanna is on Royal Road at the moment. She recently launched her Librarian series. The book is Library System Reset Overdue by Arathion. It's one of those that I started reading it primarily because I know the author from other work, and I love their work. So it was such a nice one to find another book that just stood out that was... It's both interesting and unusual because they see things slightly differently.
Mhm.
So I really enjoy that. Beyond that, on Royal Road at the moment, I don't know who else that I've been reading of late that's on there because, as I say, I know of 8 or 10 that I'm following,
Mhm.
and I can't really give a shout out to any of those because either we've already signed them or we're looking at signing them. So it's like that's kind of cheating, you know. I mean, I give shout
Mhm.
outs to some of our guys, for example, the Dread Pirate. We've got
Oh.
James no, what's it right under it? Brian J. Norden, right? Bugger it, I can't remember his writing name. Brian J. Norden that released a couple of books with us so far are going through, but it released Quest Academy, and he
Mm.
wrote he wrote a Wildcard series,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
Dread
Mhm.
Pirate, and but like I say, I know I've just now done exactly what I wasn't going to do. I was
That's
saying I
okay.
can't really promote my guys, but bugger
It's okay.
it.
You wouldn't
People,
sign
yeah,
them if you didn't like it, so it's fine.
exactly. But it's kind of cheating, I know.
Is it?
Bugger it.
Ah,
You've probably
okay.
guessed already. I'm not the most I'm not the most sort of, oh, no, I must be professional in all things. I am professional with my contracts. The rest of my life, no, bugger it. I swear
Yeah.
far too much. I used to be a welder. I swear too much. I
Oh,
drink too much. And I blow
nice.
things up occasionally for fun. You know,
Yeah,
as you do.
that makes sense. Yeah. Well done. Okay, but I think this is probably the end of this episode.
Well, thank you for having me, mate. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Um, any last words?
Well, my wife isn't about, so no, I don't feel the need for last words. You know, I'm not going to I might get stabbed yet. No, in all honesty, I would just say that there's two things really I do feel that are quite important
Mhm,
in the writing side of things. First of all is enjoy it.
mhm,
Remember that you started writing because you enjoyed it, and if you don't
mhm,
enjoy it anymore, take a bit of time out.
mhm.
The second thing is burnout is real.
Yeah.
Mental health problems are real, and it is not. I'll hold my
Mhm,
hand up. I'm 43. I was raised in the northeast of England,
mhm.
where anything that is not "I'm a man, I'm fine" is wrong. That is how
Yeah,
we were raised. It was a case of no, you never admit to weakness or failure or pain or anything. You just keep going.
and the
And
Brits in general are very, very famous for their lackadaisical expression of emotions.
yes, because we're taught to hide things from a very early age. We're taught no, you're fine,
Mhm,
you're stoic. We're okay.
mhm,
When you write, you are exposing a side of yourself that might have never seen daylight. You
mhm,
are very much sharing your innermost thoughts and everything.
mhm,
If you continue to do it, if you have some success and you continue to do this, that is great, wonderful. Bear in mind that the more you push, you are draining a well.
mhm,
And if you don't give that well time to refill, you are
mhm,
going to burn out.
mhm,
Always take a bit of time. A good friend of mine, Mike Chatfield, of the Ten Realms and quite a few other series, literally was telling me this only recently, is saying that you need to take time out after each book. Even if
mhm,
you feel totally fine, because I did for years, for the last 3 years, I've finished a series on a Friday, I've started a new series on a Monday,
mhm,
or a new book in that series, and I have taken no time out. And I
mhm,
have now been forced to take time out because I was burning out.
mhm,
And it's a case
mhm,
of if you think about it as if you take a week or you take 2 weeks at the end of each story, whoa, you've lost a week or 2 weeks. And in that time, you can do all your family bits, you can do,
mhm,
gaming, you can write other things, you can play, you can do whatever you want.
mhm,
But if you go into burnout and you go deep into burnout, you might not be able to write again for a year,
mhm,
3 years. You might never write again.
mhm.
So
Yep.
a week or two now could save you years of lost income later on.
Yeah. Plus, you just write better
Yeah.
if you enjoy it, and
Oh, God, yes.
if you're not running on fumes.
No. You need to have time out. And also, don't forget that, as writers, we are primarily hiding in our rooms, our offices, or wherever when we're
Mm,
writing. We are cut off from the world. I mean, yeah,
mm,
we've got an entire world inside of our heads, but that's because we're mad. I genuinely believe that I've been mad my entire life. Um, do take some time to interact with other people, even if it's on
mm,
Discord. I have a very active little Discord group with friends that we all
mhm,
just, we sprint together and we generally abuse each other when somebody misses a sprint or they're late. Oh, you only got 100 words that hour. Wow, what's wrong with you? A little bit of fun abuse is always good. But it's a case of do take the time for it. It really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with those wise words, we're going to end the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Jazz, and thank you for representing Legion Publishing.
Thank you very much for having me, mate.
If you listen to this and you are thinking about submitting to Legion, there's a link in the description below. I've also posted their blurb of how to approach them, what you're looking for. And if you are applying to them, let me know in the comments or just write Jez like, Maddox is the best person ever, and I've only submitted because of him. Please give him lots of money or something like that. Like, just
something nice and subtle.
Yeah, very subtle. Yeah. Otherwise, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, follow, click the bell, feed the ashes, do the Ouija board. You know the drill. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you.